apparently our federal government can't do a darn thing to address the crisis, the very, very real crisis that we have as a result of Hurricane Helene. Incredibly, Mayorkas is out saying, I'm going to let him say it. Apparently, they got no money left there at FEMA to help any of the victims of Hurricane Helene, let alone any victims from the coming hurricanes that are on the way.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
Whoa! You don't have any money to even make it through the season. I mean, I can't really believe this. This is our federal government, except that Joe Biden just said the same thing the other day. They're like, are you going to give any help to the people in North Carolina from Hurricane Helene? And he's like, sorry, we spent all the money. Remember?
We've given them all everything that we have. We're on the ground ahead of time. So we're working hard.
Are there any more resources the federal government could be giving them?
No, we've given them, we have pre-planned a significant amount of it, even though they didn't ask for it yet. Hadn't asked for it yet.
No, we've already given it out. Well, hang on. Mayorkas is saying there's no more. FEMA's out of cash. A lot of people are like, well, wait, didn't we just give $2.5 billion to Ukraine? Apparently that's earmarked differently, but doesn't necessarily sit that well with folks. And then this definitely does not sit well with folks. This headline, Biden-Harris administration used FEMA disaster funding for illegal immigrants. Then there's all of these headlines. Department of Homeland Security announces $380 million in additional funding to communities receiving migrants. Department of Homeland Security announces distribution of more than $77 million in congressional funding for communities receiving migrants. Department of Homeland Security announces distribution of more than $12 million in funding. FEMA awards $110 million to the Emergency Food and Shelters Program to assist migrants. Politico writing New York City to get $104.6 million from FEMA for asylum seekers. Department of Homeland Security announces $300 million in direct funding to communities receiving migrants and $340 million for a new competitive awards process. So is that where all the money went? Like you didn't see hurricane season coming at all? Like right before an election? I mean, the cynical side of me would say, if you guys were smart, I realize that's asking for a lot, but if you were smart, you would recognize that you suddenly held the purse strings right ahead of the election. You get the hurricane season coming along and, you can swoop in, Joe Biden, and look like a hero. I'm going to give North Carolina this. I'm going to give you guys this. I'm going to give you guys that. Instead, you're like, there's no money. North Carolina is kind of a state where it's really close. You got Trump down in Georgia acting like, he really knows. I mean, what's going on? He's on the phone with Elon Musk saying, how can we get Starlink here? It's a heck of a lot better than what we're seeing from the likes of Kamala and Joe.
The governor's doing a very good job. He's having a hard time getting the president on the phone. I guess they're not being responsive. The federal government is not being responsive. But they're having a very hard time getting the president on the phone. He won't get on, and of course the vice president, she's out someplace campaigning, looking for money.
Unbelievable. And then you have to worry about this, okay? Kamala is a champion of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you check the right box, you're on Kamala's team. If you don't look the part, well, you're just not. And you got to wonder, is that what's going to happen with all the funds, barely the funds they have, because FEMA's out of money. Of course, they spent it all on the illegal migrants coming to the border. How's she going to actually appropriate for who's going to get money, who's not going to get money in this recovery process? I'd be worried if I lived down there.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities and do that work.
I mean, wow. Okay. Wow. No, it's not about that. You know what? I believe everybody should have equal opportunity, but the outcomes are all going to be different, right? Because we believe in a meritocracy here in America. Last time I checked, I believe personally, is not just socialist, but actually communist in her thinking. And that's very dangerous to our country right now. She's not there to provide assistance from FEMA. FEMA's out of money because they've given it to all these various migrants that are coming in. They're trying to deal with the border challenge. How about actually fixing the border challenge, ladies and gentlemen? Imagine that. Why not actually try and fix the whole thing so that you don't have people coming in over the border? So that you actually put up that wall, which, by the way, she apparently is okay with now, right? Like, funny how times change. It's the American people that lose out when you have poor leadership like this. And poor leadership indeed. It's quite alarming. It's quite scary. You have leadership that's willing to go to great lengths to try and stay in power, whether that means weaponizing certain parts of our legal arm, such as what we saw with Letitia James or Jack Smith, or whether that means shutting down speech, as now Adam Schiff is continuing to ask. A new report out today. He's drafted letters to all the social media companies saying, make sure you don't allow this misinformation out there, because anything that's not in agreement with them is apparently misinformation. These are scary times. I mean, I guess before we go, we should shout out to our friends over at the gold place, because it is a scary time. I'll just remind you, if you're investing in gold, to give them a ring. American Hartford Gold, 1-844-495, up to $15,000 worth of free silver. You can text Trish to 65532. Text Trish to 65532 right now today to get the special offer.